The Scent of Lavender by K.W. The small village of Vallon, nestled in the rolling hills of Provence, was a world unto itself. Fields of lavender stretched for miles, painting the landscape in hues of purple, with their scent carried on the gentle summer breeze. It was here, among the quiet whispers of nature, that Amélie found solace after her fast-paced life in Paris. She had rented a modest stone cottage at the edge of town, hoping to spend her summer writing. But as the days passed, her thoughts were less focused on her work and more on the intoxicating beauty of her surroundings. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, turning everything golden, Amélie walked down the narrow path that led from her cottage to the village market. As she approached the market square, she saw a man standing by one of the stalls, a local farmer by the look of his weathered clothes and sun-kissed skin. He stood out from the rest, tall and strong, with dark hair tousled by the wind and eyes the color of deep amber. He glanced up, catching her gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Amélie felt a rush of heat flood her cheeks, surprised by the intensity of the connection in that fleeting second. The man smiled softly and turned back to the stall, speaking to the vendor in a rich baritone. She couldn't tear her eyes away, curiosity getting the better of her. She approached the same stall moments later, her heart still racing from their brief encounter. As she picked through the ripe peaches, the scent of lavender in the air heightened her awareness of everything around her. "You're new here," his voice interrupted her thoughts. Amélie looked up to find him standing next to her, his gaze steady but kind. His proximity made her pulse quicken. "I am," she replied softly, meeting his eyes. "Just for the summer." "I'm Luc," he said, offering his hand. His grip was firm but gentle, his touch sending a warm current up her arm. "Amélie," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a moment of silence between them, the kind of silence that crackled with unspoken energy. Luc's eyes lingered on her, as though he was trying to decipher her thoughts. She felt the heat rising between them, and though nothing had been said, the tension was undeniable. "Would you like to see my farm?" Luc asked, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "I promise the lavender fields are more beautiful up close." Amélie hesitated for only a second before nodding. "I'd love to." Luc's farm was a short walk from the village, and as they approached, Amélie couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of it. The vast fields of lavender stretched out before them, the soft purples blending with the golden light of the setting sun. The scent was overwhelming in the best way, a heady mixture of earth and flowers. Luc led her through the rows of lavender, the plants brushing softly against their legs as they walked. The air was warm, but with a gentle breeze that kept the heat at bay. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," Amélie said, her voice filled with awe. "It's my sanctuary," Luc admitted, looking out at the fields. "Whenever I feel lost, I come here." Amélie glanced at him, seeing something deeper in his eyes. There was a quiet strength about him, but also a vulnerability that drew her in. She found herself wanting to know more, to peel back the layers of this man who had already ignited something inside her. They walked until they reached the edge of the field, where a small wooden bench overlooked the valley. Luc gestured for her to sit, and he joined her, their legs almost touching. The silence between them was no longer awkward, but filled with an unspoken promise. "So what brought you to Vallon?" Luc asked after a moment, his voice soft but curious. "I needed to get away," Amélie admitted, surprised by how easily the truth slipped from her lips. "Life in Paris was too much, too fast. I couldn't breathe." Luc nodded in understanding. "I left the city for the same reason. There's something about this place that makes everything feel simpler, more real." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, Amélie felt as though the rest of the world had fallen away. It was just the two of them, sitting in a field of lavender, the air thick with possibility. Luc's gaze dropped to her lips, and Amélie felt her breath catch in her throat. Slowly, as though giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned in. His lips were soft but insistent, and when they met hers, it felt like coming home. The kiss deepened, the world around them fading into a blur of sensation. Luc's hands gently cradled her face, his touch sending sparks of desire coursing through her body. She felt the heat rising between them, her heart pounding in her chest as she gave herself over to the moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Luc rested his forehead against hers, his eyes still closed. I've wanted to do that since I first saw you, he confessed, his voice low and husky. Amélie smiled, her heart swelling with a mixture of joy and longing. I'm glad you did. The following days were filled with stolen moments between them. They spent mornings walking through the fields, afternoons by the river, and evenings watching the sun dip below the horizon. Each time they touched, each kiss they shared, felt like a spark to the kindling of something deeper. One evening, after a long day spent wandering the countryside, they returned to Luke's farmhouse. The night air was cool, the stars shining brightly overhead. Luke opened a bottle of wine, and they sat on the porch, the wooden chairs creaking softly beneath them. I've never met anyone like you, Luke said quietly, his eyes searching hers in the dim light. Amélie felt her heart flutter, the sincerity in his voice stirring something deep within her. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his hand, and without a word, he pulled her into his arms. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other's embrace, the weight of the world falling away. Amélie tilted her head up, and Luke kissed her again, slow and sweet, the kind of kiss that promised so much more than words ever could. As the night stretched on, they moved inside, the warmth of the house a sharp contrast to the cool night air. Luke's hands roamed her body, gentle but insistent, his touch igniting a fire in her she hadn't felt in years. Their passion was slow, deliberate, each moment savored as they lost themselves in one another. The next morning, as the sun rose over the lavender fields, Amélie lay in Luke's arms, her heart full in a way she had never known. She knew then that her summer in Valon would be more than a brief escape. It would be the beginning of something that would change her life forever.